Trying to be a more adventurous eater, but it's hard. I was watching this food show, and this guy was eating food.
Hey guys, Pete here. This will be my Mare of Easttown Episode 5 breakdown. As has become the standard, a ton of things happen across the cast of characters. As we near the end, some of these things are overshadowed by the big events, but everything still feels like it might turn out to be important, so I tried my best to include everything, and do have to give a quick spoiler warning before we get started, for anyone who might have wandered in here without watching the episode first. With that out of the way, let's get into it. There are a lot of new developments, but a lot of incomplete information to go along with them. How did Ryan know something was going on with his dad? Why did Dylan reach out to Jess about Erin's journal? And why is she misleading the police for him? If Deacon Mark was with Erin on the night she died, what else does he know? And there's also a ton of revelation, so I'll start at the beginning. The first casualty of the episode was Betty Carroll. She had a heart attack and crashed her car into a telephone pole. The new cop who had an issue with the sight of blood in the first episode arrives on the scene to identify the body. The crash causes the power to go out, and at Lori's place, she walks by her son Ryan's room and hears her husband John telling him to keep a secret. John tells him that everything will be alright, but this is just between them. No one else can know about it. At Mare's place, her ex-husband Frank comes over, and when he talks to Siobhan, we learn that things aren't going well between him and his fiancée Faye for the first time, but he says they'll get through it. They have a father-daughter moment when he asks her how she's doing, and she tells him that she met someone. We'll come back to Frank at the end, but the Siobhan story in this episode seems pretty straightforward. Her new older girlfriend, who isn't part of the Easttown where everyone knows everyone else dynamic, is continuing to try to get her to think about leaving the place behind. While Mare's looking for Drew's turtle, she sees her daughter's documentary on her laptop and watches a clip of Kevin she shot on his birthday when he was still a kid. This hits her pretty hard, and we'll see that she keeps thinking about it throughout the episode. We also see her continue to go to therapy throughout. We get a lot of information in the first visit. She talks about how Kevin was a normal kid and how his issues progressed. The therapist asks her if there's a family history of mental illness. From that, we learn that her dad was depressed, that she's had periods of depression herself, and we knew that her father had died when she was 13, but here we learn that he actually shot himself. This is a pretty big revelation. Not only did Kevin die from suicide, but her father did as well. She asks if mental illness is something you pass on through the generations, and this works to reinforce why she's so terrified for Drew. Later at home, we see the Rosses come over. Everyone seems to be in pretty good spirits at first. They're talking. Erin's dad, Kenny, asks Lori and John about adopting DJ. You can see where he's coming from with that. His relationship with Dylan might be awkward going forward. And Mare doesn't really comment on the idea of adoption, but does ask them if they thought Kenny hit her. It feels like a strange shift, but this is where things start to get interesting. We had seen Lori looking at Drew, and we know there's something building under the surface there. John says that Kenny didn't hit her, but Lori follows up right after him, qualifying, saying that they all knew he wasn't treating her right. We also learn that Erin's mother died of leukemia, but didn't tell anyone about it until the end. And so John compares Erin to her being tough, but then he says that they took care of her because Kenny wasn't a good dad. Then Lori drops the bomb when she says that Erin lived with Billy for a while. Mare lights up, and when she asks him about it, he plays it off like it was a long time ago and he doesn't really remember the details. The reasoning was that her mother had just died, Kenny was drinking a lot, and they didn't want her around that situation. Again, Lori adds to the conversation, pointing out that it was longer than a few weeks, but it was more like a couple of months that she stayed with him. From there, he goes straight to nervous. He looks at his watch, tells everyone he has to leave, and it looks like he's making an excuse to everyone there. He had just opened a fresh beer, and we see Mare look at that, and it's pretty clear that she thinks something's up. The next day, Lori gets called to pick Ryan up from school after he knocks the crap out of this kid in the lunchroom after seeing him bully his sister. When they get in the car, she asks him what his dad was telling him to keep a secret about. She asks, is he doing it again? And Ryan runs out of the car. She finds him crying on a picnic table. And when she asks him again and adds, is it the same woman as before? He nods his head yes. Later in the episode, we'll see Lori crying in her room. Then we see John is packed up and he's ready to leave. He may be going to a hotel for a few days. He may be leaving for good. We don't really find out. We don't hear anything that they say to each other. We only see him say goodbye to Ryan and try to console him, try to tell him it'll be all right. And we just see that Ryan ignores him as he goes out the door. I mean, the implication is that John is having an affair. He's had them in the past, but it is short on details, and I will come back and talk about John a little bit more towards the end. Elsewhere in town, as Missy's experiencing opiate withdrawal, Katie's taking care of her. When asked, she says she's been there for about a year and that there was another girl there named Hillary who took care of her when she was experiencing the same thing. When asked what happened to her, Katie explains that she got pregnant and that he didn't like it. And there was some discussion about what the kidnapper was up to. I thought that it was pretty clear that he was using them for sex. And I think everything we see in this sequence backs that up. Because we see him come in and he ties them up so that they'll be quiet when he has people over for poker night. Also, we saw Deacon Mark get beat up at the pizza shop. He comes home and Father Dan tries to console him, tries to find out what's going on. He wants to call the police, but Mark won't let him. And there we get another big revelation that he was with Erin the night that she was killed. She had called, asked him to pick her up at Sharp's Woods. She got another message, and that led to him driving her to Brandywyne Park. That's the park where her fingertip was found, and what Colin and Mare assumed to be the crime scene where they found the bullet lodged in the tree. He said on the way there he was trying to talk her into going home, but she was hysterical, and then he just says that she stormed off. When Dan asked him why he didn't tell the police, he said he was scared because of his past allegation. And he had her bike in the car, so he threw it in the river. Which you can kind of see why he might do that. However, no one's going to believe him now. And with the story about what happened at the other parish getting out, it's likely that even if he is innocent, it's not going to be easy for him to prove that. I think the big twist in this episode was everything dealing with Dylan. First, we see him with Brianna. He says that his parents are also thinking of adopting DJ, that they talked to Child Protective Services. He asks about her assault case. We get the idea that they haven't been together much. We didn't see her at the hospital at all. She tries to be supportive and he's kind of keeping her at arm's length. And then she drops a bomb saying that she woke up on the night that Erin was killed and he wasn't in bed. He tries to make excuses and she shoots them all down. She looked all around the house and she knew he wasn't there. He tells her to leave and he doesn't let up until she does. Later, we see Jess come out of her apartment building. She gets into a car with him and his friend, and when asked, she tells Dylan she pointed Mare to an old hiding place for the journals. She mentions that Mare called back after she found the necklace, and basically it comes out that she was misleading the police because Dylan told her to. Now, we don't know why, and we don't know how long this has been going on. It's still not 100% clear if she went to see Lori and tell her about Frank because she actually believed that, or if that's something that Dylan told her to do as well. Either way, they break into Erin's house, they go into her room, they find the journals in their hiding place. Dylan also finds money that she was saving for DJ's surgery. It doesn't look like a lot, but he does pocket that. And even though they seem to have had a pact that they wouldn't read the journals, Jess still is. There's a page we see on screen where Erin mentions it being hard, being a single mother, and mentions Deacon Mark trying to help her find solace in God, more or less. Later, we see them burn the diaries in a fireplace. Jess is still reading through them, and then we see her pull a photograph out of one of them and put it in her pocket. There's something going on with these kids, that's for sure. Dylan got up and he left on the night that Erin died. And at this point, we don't know why they're working together or what they're trying to accomplish. There is a ton of Mare and Colin in this episode. It's fun to watch and a good setup, but the way it plays out is that it's all just there to set up a dramatic ending. They go out on a date and we find out that Mare only agreed to that because she wanted to pick his brain about the case. He gets frustrated and tells her about it, and she gets pretty cold and ends up leaving. There is mention of this girl Hillary's case, the one that Katie was talking about being there when she arrived, but in the end it turns out they didn't even need this to find the kidnapper. Before we get to that, we see Mare laying in bed with Drew. She's thinking about the incident with Kevin in the bathroom. We see her continue to go to therapy where it looks like with each time they show her, she's more open to the treatment. On her way home at night, she sees the same person she thought was a peeping Tom from episode 1. This time she chases after him to find out that he's a 77-year-old dementia patient, but she doesn't find that out until after she throws him down his stairs. She gets chewed out about this, and the chief definitely looks pissed, but he doesn't do anything. He just tells her to go home. This doesn't slow her down from working the case, just as the bad date doesn't keep her away from Colin. And I guess it was right around the time that his mom told him to just be careful out there that I really started to worry about whether he was going to make it through this episode alive. Through their conversation with the girl that got away from the kidnapper, they get a partial plate. Before they get the report on those, they have a chance for her to explain that her life screwed up and she's sorry, but she's not able to be what he wants. That gives him a chance to confess that he didn't really solve the cold case. It was really a private investigator that the victim's family hired. Colin initially ignored him, but when he did get around to going to talk to him, he found out that he was sick, he was in hospice, he was dying, and he got a hold of the file and realized that he did find something, and Colin used that to make it look like he solved the case. To make him feel better about it, she confesses that she planted the drugs on Carrie, and he gets his moment to give her a kiss, saying, "How do you know what I want?" And we see that there's a moment where this is starting to work for her. There's still a chance at a romance between these two. It isn't meant to be, though. They arrive at Mr. Potts' place. He's got some loud Judas Priest playing, and when the camera pulls out as they walk into his house, we see the Benny sign on the other side of the building. He goes into the bar area to turn down the music, and Colin notices that pack of Winston sitting there. Mare goes for her gun and realizes she doesn't have it, and Colin unbuttons his in the holster. Katie and Missy hear the voices downstairs and realize he wasn't expecting these visitors since he didn't chain them up. They use the opportunity to start banging on a pipe, and Mare and Colin notice this right away. Things get super tense as they continue, and just as Zabel's going for his gun, Potts shoots him in the head. And I mean, it's a direct headshot. We see the blood spatter on the wall coming out of the back of his head. Mare gets her injury as she's running away. She gets shot in the hand, but she makes it out of the room. She tries to hide, but notices a camera and realizes he might know where she is. Through a hole in the floor, we see Colin's body on the ground downstairs with the gun next to it. There's a super intense slow motion chase. She discovers the girls, but she can't open their room. She's hiding. He's shooting through the walls. And she grabs a piece of metal and hits him over the head twice that buys her enough time to run downstairs. There, she's able to get to Colin's gun and is able to shoot Potts several times. He looks pretty dead, and we see the squad cars pull up as she was able to text them in the process, and the police come in and she's sitting against the door thinking of that video of Kevin, and it cuts to black and the episode ends there. So rest in peace, Colin and Mr. Potts. They both look pretty dead. After last week's recap and the follow-up video on the trailer breakdown and theories, I had a lot of comments starting to wonder if Colin might be a suspect. Where things are left, I think that's probably not the case. I think we found out his dirty little secret. And we didn't learn much about Mr. Potts, but it does seem like he was operating on his own and that his intention was just to use these girls as sex slaves. At the end, we do get closure for the Katie Bailey case. We should see her reunited with Dawn and Kenzie. Mare continuing to work the case was the difference in seeing this thing through, and there was a price. Detective Colin Zabel looks like he paid it with his life. Overall, this was one of the most gripping endings of an episode in the series. They did a solid job in setting up the pieces to make things incredibly intense in the face-off inside Benny's Tavern. Even after picking through the trailer for clues, I really wasn't sure if they were going to be where the girls were being held when it all went down. As it played out, losing Colin was like having the wind knocked out of you. The fact that he fumbled his way through their date and still couldn't let go of his ideas about Mare, it all worked really well. If nothing else, it's going to have an impact on Mare going forward, and she's already got a lot of other regrets and pain that is all competing for her attention. You feel for Mare, and I thought most of this was handled well, but from my perspective, there's still this, yeah, that's awful, but energy in her story. I like Mare, and most of her backstory is super compelling. I mean, not only did her father commit suicide when she was a teen, but her son followed in his footsteps. Of course, I like a flawed character, but the power dynamic between her and Carrie is so skewed that it's still hard to accept how things played out. Plus, she doesn't seem to have any remorse about doing what she did, and everyone that knows about it seems willing to write it off as, yeah, that's just Mare. But the story isn't told yet, so we'll see where they go. With the kidnapper out of the way, the path is cleared to get to the bottom of Erin's story. Who is DJ's father? Who killed her? And essentially, what do these things say about the town of Easttown? In an episode where we got some answers, things also took some unexpected turns. And as I mentioned at the beginning, our understanding of the developments is incomplete. If I hadn't watched the trailer, the Dylan and Jess thing would have been a complete surprise. And I was shocked when Brianna said that he left the house on the night Erin died. The Ross family and the Deacon Mark reveals were a little more telegraphed, but it still isn't clear how things are going to play out. The pace is still full speed ahead. The answer to new mysteries ratio isn't getting too lopsided, which is nice. And there are still some funny moments to lighten things up from time to time. Most of those belong to Jean Smart, and this episode was no exception. I really loved her face as she was grabbing food as Mr. Carroll was coming clean about their affair. She also had a very human moment when she was with Carrie, telling her that she was helping her for purely selfish reasons. Because she's afraid Carrie's going to get full custody and cut them out of Drew's life, and she can't bear to lose another one. The spotlight being on the Rosses also makes me wonder about Faye and Frank having problems. Sure, she would have been mad at him because of what happened with Mare coming over to their house, but they're having ongoing problems hints that there may have been other suspicions or something else going on before that happened. Lori caught a lot of my attention. I know she had the underlying tension with John going on, but it seemed like she was really kind of nudging Mare to maybe pay attention to her husband, an old weird cousin Billy on top of that. They're obvious suspects that were flying under the radar because they were the somewhat normal hometown types. They seem mostly like good guys, but Lori is in a unique position to know things about them that nobody else does. I'll get into all of that more in the follow-up video. The trailer this week isn't quite as juicy, so we'll be able to get through that pretty quick and focus on endgame theories. That'll come out in a few days. For now, there's a lot to think about. RIP, R.I.P. to Betty Carroll and Colin Zabel. Let me know in the comments what you think about the episode, what you think about that ending, and where you think things are going from here. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.